Hello, hello all. Welcome to Much Ado here at the Priory. I'm going to give a quick talk now. Firstly, hi, I'm Mingma. I'm playing Beatrice tonight. I also adapted this version of Much Ado, and this quick talk, the purpose is to give an idea of the darker aspects, the halloweeny, All Hallows aspects of Much Ado, and particularly what we enjoyed in our production. That'll go on for a little bit, and we'll have time for some questions, and then we'll have a quick break, and then onwards with the show. Firstly, give me an idea. How well does everyone know Much Ado? Hands up. Is there a feeling? Nice. How well do people know Shakespeare in general in the room? Yeah. Okay. Good to know on this. Fab. So I thought I would start with a little story of us performing this production in June, when we were in Lymington on the Solent, looking out at the Isle of Wight, and it was an extraordinary day where it was very, very hot, and we turned up and unexpectedly had an audience of 400. It was a venue which we had never been to before, and the show went very well. Afterwards, our stage manager talked to the husband of the woman who had hosted us that day and was saying, "I hear that you really enjoy Shakespeare, and what in particular do you like about Much Ado?" And he said, "Well, I don't really enjoy it, but when you're in solitary confinement for 4 years, there's only so much that you can read." It turned out we were in the garden of Simon Mann, for those who might remember that story. And one thing he relayed as well was being in solitary confinement for 4 years, not being able to talk and reading all the Shakespeares. He realised that nearly every character within Shakespeare's canon, there's one person who is on the brink of madness. Obviously, we know about the Hamlets of this world, but it got me thinking about Much Ado as well. This, who are the mad characters within Much? Who is right on the brink of violence and right on the brink of tipping over? Quite often when Much Ado is performed, for those who don't know it, haven't seen it before, it's a comedy. It is about two different sets of couples. Will they, won't they? It's about Much Ado about nothing, that a rumour is spread and a marriage almost doesn't come off, but then it does come off, and it's a glorious moment where it all comes together. And within a lot of productions nowadays, we can tend to focus too much when we are performing Shakespeare, if you hear it as a comedy, on the fact that it is a comedy, that all things become broad brushstroke, all things become farce. Within Much Ado, I was very interested when adapting it in the violent aspects, that actually if you look at the text, there is always this slight hint of violence, particularly with, again, for those who don't know, there are two main couples. There is Beatrice and Benedick, the classic quarrelsome lovers who end up being ending up married, going from hating each other to loving. And then there is Claudio and Hero, who actually, when you look at the text, Claudio and Hero are the main plot devices. They are the main couple. Beatrice and Benedick are meant to be the comedy, though of course they quite often tend to be used as the upstage and the ones who are remembered. And within that plot, there is a very clear moment when Claudio could very, very nearly kill Hero for the rumours which he has heard about her, for the fact of believing that she has slept with someone else. And there is a real moment, both with him and with her father, that what she has done in giving away her virginity is so heinous that these men might murder her. And there's a very interesting thing about this idea of virginity and this idea of Pardon, Goddess of the Night, the song which they sing around Hero's grave, the supposed grave, when they've all set it up to make everyone feel bad about what they did. And the Goddess of the Night being Diana, the goddess of the moon, but also of virginity. And this concept of this untouchable thing, this untouchable object, this product, which could be sullied. It's a very interesting metaphor, particularly when you compare it with these two couples. When I was first adapting the show, I spoke with one of our trustees. We are a charity to bring theatre to wonderful spaces like this. And this trustee had been an academic in Shakespeare. And one thing that she pointed out was that if you look at the structure, Much Ado was written right at this point in Shakespeare's life where two different forms of marriage were fighting with each other within Tudor society and going into Jacobean. One was the classic feudal marriage of the beautiful daughter who is, with her dowry, is passed over to a certain other man, and the husband pays a certain amount, and then they end up with a kind of landed gentry classic. Let's build our lands together. Let's make this work. We see this very clearly with Claudio and with Hero. There's a lot of context in the play where we hear people say Hero is Leonato, her father's only heir. It takes them 7 nights to decide the final things before the marriage because they are finalising the deal. It is a very particular kind of marriage of land and of family and of property. It could be a very successful one. The other side is the Beatrice and Benedict, which is much more of the Tudor bustling middle class. It is of the people who, actually, fun fact, in Tudor times, the average age of marriage is around 31, which is not something many people know. And that came from the middle class, from the people who would wait until the husband knew that he had enough of a business that meant he could support the family. He might have been engaged to the woman for 10 years, but they would wait until they were ready and supported to be able to go forward. This was also much more, though Puritans are quite often now derided, it was a very Puritan idea of the Word of God. This was right at the point when the Bible was being translated in English legitimately, no longer was it illegal, and people were thinking more about the word and the importance of words and of equals marrying. And so what you see with Beatrice and Benedict is this match of character and this match of wits, the whole virginity thing. Leonato, again, as an example, the father of Hero, God forbid that she should be she should have any eyes for anyone, that she couldn't just be this product, this chaste virginal product. But for his more middle-class, poor relation, Beatrice, he's very happy to get involved in the gulling scene to help her kind of have this idea of sex and, possibly this, because she and Benedict are these, probably both are from that more middle-class thing, that more poor relation side. If they marry, their marriage has to be this marriage of minds and of wits and of what they might build together. And so that's something we really wanted to play with within our show, these two sides of marriages, and this kind of slight threat of violence that, again, though it's a very fun play, there is always this little hint of almost an Othello-likeness to Claudio, I think. This idea of we often say with Shakespeare that that a comedy is only a comedy because everyone marries at the end. A tragedy is only a tragedy because everyone dies. And, there are certain plays, Othello being an example, where you are tearing your hair out because, please, if you just said one thing here, you'd realise it was all fine, and then you'd marry and it'd be fine, it'd be a comedy. And Much Ado does feel a bit like it fell on the side of the comedy, but only just. So that's a brief introduction. Does anyone have any questions before we see it on that? No, great. Brilliant. What time am I on?
10 minutes.
Oh, wow, okay, I've been doing very well. Anything. We've got another kind of 5 minutes or so, if there's anything which people are.
It's great to hear your thinking and the way that it's going to be performed.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
I'm glad. No, I think it is still a very funny play. I will also say that I hope you very much enjoy it. It is intended to be pacey and fun and full of music and all the rest of it. But yes, there's always this moment.
There's a passion behind it as well.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
The play is set in Messina.
Yes.
Is it known if Shakespeare ever did go to Italy?
We are almost certain that he didn't. But a lot of his troupe would go and learn Commedia dell'arte. And so it's very certain that a lot of them would go to Verona and to Venice to learn from the Italian improvisers and then would come back to London. And so I'm certain there was one kind of, real stuck-up person saying, well, when I was in Italy, and all the stories would continue. It's a very interesting point that within Shakespeare's words and language, quite often if you were going to see a play in Shakespeare's time, you'd go to hear a play, you wouldn't see it. And so when you think about the language and the words and a lot of the metaphors, you'd think that actually these people thought much more with their ears than perhaps we do. It wasn't an entirely literate society. So again, whenever you hear those metaphors, it actually doesn't necessarily matter that it is Italy. It's more that he is giving people these ideas, and in some ways the travel news or the idea of what something might be, again, it's the imagination and the setting of Italy. I don't think even necessarily mattered that it was Italy.
Just there's this gap in his life between teaching in Stratford and then his playwriting in London.
Yes.
And
Totally. I mean, he definitely could have ended up in Italy. I know one fun fact is that actually a lot of the players of London, whenever plague hit London at his time, they would all head off into Europe. And there's a great story that they would end up in Antwerp or Amsterdam and would find a Danish actor from over here. And this one, I remember you from 10 years ago. We worked. They would form up their own companies and they would set off down the great rivers of Europe to the Danube and the Gdansk and these areas. And we have evidence in Poland of, in Shakespeare's time, Romeo and Juliet and Othello and others of the plays being performed in Poland. And
Shakespeare's festival in Gdansk at the moment, isn't there?
yes, yeah, exactly. Yes, and that's they know that they had a proper globe-like theatre there at that time, and that's again one reason. If you look at Shakespeare, why there is always the mask, there is always the sword fight, there is always the wedding, and actually they used to earn their license to perform in those kind of cities by performing to the court. The court, they take out all the rude bits for the courtly audience and say, this is a very moral play, would you let us perform it to your town, and that's when we'll actually kind of make our money back. And the court would agree, and as part payment they'd be given the costumes from last year's court shows. And so part of Shakespeare was the fashion show. Then they would go down, and even if you didn't understand the English of what was going on, at least you could see the pretty outfits of what was worn in court last season. Not so different from some things we watch now. Any other questions?
So, I mean, all the actors were male, right, in Shakespeare's day?
Yes.
So, I mean, how did they play it then with, like, male-female relation? Did they always play it as a kind of farce or as a kind of comedy? I mean, how did that work?
Again, we can guess. We won't always know. There are so many jokes within Shakespeare of the man dressing as a woman who then dresses as a man, and how that goes. I think they were always very self-aware of the fact that it was men, but also remember that they would always normally cast boys with unbroken voices in the female parts. And part of that is, of course, there'd be some of the more untrained actors of the troupe, the pretty ones. And again, the same trustee who gave me this thing about the marriage, she mentioned that really there are certain parts, Viola comes to mind in Twelfth Night, Portia possibly another one, where if you just stand there and say the lines prettily, that's what Shakespeare needed you to do, because he was casting it for a 15-year-old boy who had no idea about acting. Which is a bit annoying when you want to say, I want a strong female character here. The other side of it as well is that we have no idea how sexuality would have been seen at that time, and this is right at a point where really the male costumes and the male fashion of that time was far more extravagant than the female fashion, that we had a queen on the throne who spent all of her time saying she is a prince, that she was a young man. That was part of her persona and propaganda. If you look at her costumes, a lot of it was to do with desexualizing and making herself have a long torso like a prince and this kind of thing. So again, there was something very interesting happening about gender and sexuality that I don't think we have the words nowadays to explore.
The audience were mixed, were they? I mean, men and women worked together.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I think, yeah, it was mixed, but very much segregated in terms of class. I think that there's some kind of figure that they know that, again, I think Romeo and Juliet, they know that about half of London, the population of London, the number of it would have seen it. Really, if you wanted entertainment in Tudor England, you either went to the Globe or you went to cockfighting. What time are we on?
18 minutes past.
80, perfect. All right, I will go and check if there are no more questions. We will have another quick question and answer session after the show, because we are slightly holding you here as we prepare the secret spaces after the show. So, if you want to refute anything I've said then, you're welcome to. So this is the last chance for toilet or anything like that, and then we'll be ready to go very shortly. So thank you.